My wife said she'd frame me for assault after I discovered her affair. So, I installed cameras around the house to catch her in the act and won everything in court. I'm speaking as a free man after finishing the divorce a couple of months ago. This is going to be pretty long and complicated, so buckle up. Some time ago, my eldest came to me, saying she wanted to tell me something, but she was scared to tell me. I comforted her and told her she could tell me anything. Well, what she said shocked me and changed everything in an instant. She said that for months, Mama had been bringing a man over on some Saturdays while I was at work, and referred to him as her special friend. She got our kids to keep quiet about it through bribery, but my eldest realized something was very wrong and spent some time gathering the courage to tell me. Kids know things and pick up on stuff quickly, and I really dislike when people dismiss that fact. I had already noticed my wife acting a bit differently lately. She had been short with everyone, especially the kids. When I tried talking to her, she'd go off on me about any little thing, insulting my appearance, my character, my habits, even my side of the family. She even brought up that I used to smoke, something I quit over 5 years ago. Then, she resorted to locking me out of our bedroom, crying so loud you could hear it all over the house. When my eldest came to me, I put 2 and 2 together. She was cheating. Her behavior reminded me of the mood swings she had when pregnant with both of our kids, only worse. From what I gathered online and what friends and a counselor told me, my wife was moody and projecting because of her cheating. I'm no expert in psychology, but it seemed to make sense. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, but I ordered and set up hidden cameras anyway without anyone knowing. I had them delivered to my work so no one at home would see. Then I set them up while my wife was out for a girls' night. It was easy to connect them to Wi-Fi, and within a few hours, I could monitor the house from my PC, laptop, or work computer. At first, I worried I might be going overboard, but I told myself if I was wrong, I'd remove the cameras and no one would know. But my worst fears were confirmed. Within the first week, I had plenty of evidence. The man my wife was seeing was a former colleague of hers. I remembered him well. They always seemed close whenever I met him at work functions. My wife had quit her job years ago to be a full-time mom after getting pregnant with our first child, a mutual decision at the time. She stayed connected with her former co-workers, but not anymore. This affair made her hated by everyone who knew her. The affair partner, AP, was younger than my wife by about a decade. She had mentored him at her old job, and they stayed close. My wife and I are both over 40, but you wouldn't know it from looking at her. She often got mistaken for being in her 20s, and I think she used that to her advantage. I ended up confiding in my sister, showing her the footage from the nanny cams. She admitted she had suspected something for a while and once saw my wife at a bar getting too close to a man that wasn't me. There wasn't any kissing, just lots of contact, touching his shoulders and back. Since she wasn't sure, she didn't tell me earlier. I also ordered a GPS tracker and hid it in my wife's car. My sister and her husband agreed to help track her. On my wife's next supposed girls' night, she went somewhere completely different, far from her usual spot, and met up with AP. My sister and brother-in-law watched from their car as AP rubbed my wife's stomach while they talked, recording the whole thing. When I saw the footage, I knew she was pregnant with his baby. My sister and brother-in-law had to calm me down because I was a mess. I wanted to drink, but my sister rightly told me that was the worst thing I could do. Later, I decided to take a leave from work but told my wife I was going on a business trip. She couldn't hide her excitement about me leaving. She couldn't be the person I married almost 20 years ago. Was she some kind of imposter or alien? The more I thought about it, the less sense it made, so I gave up trying to make sense of it. I had cameras all over the house, and my sister and brother-in-law agreed to take my kids for a few days, giving my wife the perfect opportunity to act. Only hours after I left, she called AP over to spend the night. I won't go into detail about what they did, but on top of everything, they joked about me. They talked openly about their baby and how they needed to figure things out before it started to show, as she was already over 4 months pregnant. Since AP was a different race, it would be obvious the baby wasn't mine. My wife brushed off AP's concerns, saying they had months to figure it out. Then she shamelessly admitted this wasn't even her first affair. She had cheated on me once when she was 25. She told AP she was tired of acting like a good housewife, tired of being with a boring man like me. She said if it weren't for my financial stability, she'd have left me long ago. When AP asked about our kids, she said, "He can have them." She didn't even want to be around our kids anymore, convinced they liked me better and that she'd soon have her do-over baby. I nearly threw my laptop across the room in disgust, but I contained myself, grabbed dinner at a diner, and watched a movie. I spent the rest of the night lying in bed thinking. I thought I knew my wife so well. I loved her and would have given her everything. But in the end, some people are just like this, and you never truly know them until they reveal their real self. I made up my mind that night, I was going to destroy her in the divorce. I'm normally a very kind and calm man, but get me angry enough and I can become your worst nightmare. The very next day, I went to see a law firm for divorce lawyers and asked for the meanest lawyer they had. I live in an at-fault state, so my wife was screwed the moment I had her affair on camera. The lawyer was initially apprehensive that I wanted to hire him so quickly, but once I explained the situation in more detail and showed him some of the video footage, he got a devilish grin, and we shook hands. He said he'd start right away because this was the kind of case divorce lawyers love to dig their teeth into. I had my wife served a few weeks later on a day I was working from home, while the kids were in school, the eldest in kindergarten and the youngest in preschool. The papers were delivered right to my wife's hands by the local sheriff. The cameras caught it all. She looked scared as she opened the envelope, read the contents, and then lost her mind. She came running into my office to scream at me, but I remained cool and calm. By then, I was already mentally checked out of our marriage. My wife wanted to argue, but I just told her I'd made up my mind and wanted her out of my house. I'm the only one who's ever paid into the mortgage. She screamed at me, saying I couldn't do this to her, and then actually threatened to accuse me of laying hands on her to ruin my reputation and get me fired. I told her to go right ahead and make up any lie she wanted, it wouldn't help her. I reminded her she was pregnant with her AP's baby anyway. Her eyes went wide, and she asked how much I knew. I just said I knew enough and once again told her to leave. She refused and said it was as much her house as it was mine, then locked herself in the bedroom. I saw on the bedroom cameras that she was having a meltdown, then she pulled out her phone and called the police. She was acting like she was in complete panic, but there was a huge smile on her face while she did it. She was quite the actress. I'd have believed her performance over the phone if I didn't already know she was lying. I waited for the police with the front door wide open and told them to come right in. When they arrived, they seemed ready for a showdown, but the house was clean, and there were no signs of any sort of fight. My wife came running out of the bedroom, grabbed one of the officers' vests, crying and saying I was a crazy person. I asked one of the other officers to let me show them evidence of what was really going on. He agreed, which startled my wife. She wasn't aware I had recorded her. I showed the officer the footage from the cameras on my laptop, my wife saying she'd make stuff up to ruin my life, the footage of her running out of my office into the master bedroom, and the footage of her calling the police and lying. I had it all recorded from multiple angles, no less. Even though she claimed to the police I'd hit her, not only were there no marks on her, but the cameras all around the house showed a completely different story. I handed the police a thumb drive with all the video footage they needed, proving she had called them under false pretenses. Even in the face of all this, my wife stuck to her lie, saying I was constantly laying hands on her and assaulting her. She even tried to claim the recordings were illegal and therefore inadmissible. But I pointed out that the cameras were legal since they were security cameras inside of my own home, not recorded in public. My wife looked to the police and told them to do something, and they did. She was the one put in handcuffs, and she started bawling like a child. I could only sit there shaking my head. This was once the woman I had loved for so many years. I thought she was a wonderful, intelligent, and endearing person. I couldn't have been more wrong. As the police took her away, she screamed that they couldn't do this to her but didn't resist much, knowing that resisting would have added to her charges. Afterward, I shut down all her credit cards that were in my name and stopped any future payments into the joint bank account. So she had to use entirely her own money to bail herself out of jail. She'd saved plenty over the years, as she was still working while the mortgage was only on me. She wasn't broke by any means. She came back for her car, which I'd taken the liberty of packing with a few of her suitcases full of clothes and other things. I left the key on the seat, so she wasn't even able to come back into the house. Her parents came to speak to me a day after she got out of jail. Initially, they only had the backward story she had told them, which was basically the same lie she told the police. Her father, especially, was ready to tackle me to the ground. He's old but big and strong. But when I asked if he knew anything about her affair or her pregnancy, he looked very surprised and gave me the chance to explain. I pulled out the laptop again and showed my in-laws what I had recorded. When they found out the truth, they were disgusted. They couldn't believe this person was their daughter. They apologized to me and said they'd keep in touch to help out with my kids. Then they called my wife on speaker, right in front of me, and confronted her about her lies. She tried to double down until they said they were with me right then and had seen the recordings. My wife's parents wanted her out of their house immediately. She tried to backpedal, but my in-laws said they did not raise her to be a selfish, cheating woman who would try to frame her own husband, and that she was no longer their daughter. They disowned her over the phone right then and there, and hung up before my wife could say anything else. She tried to call back, but they ignored her every attempt. When they got home, not only was she gone, but she had destroyed several things around their house, which left my mother-in-law in tears. I still consider my ex-wife's parents to be my in-laws because they drop by from time to see their grandchildren. But my ex-wife is effectively gone to us all. Later, my wife came back with her AP to pack her things. AP wouldn't even come into the house, and my wife refused to speak a word to me while gathering her remaining belongings. She knew there were cameras everywhere, and she'd damn herself more if she tried anything else. I wasn't alone either, as my sister and brother-in-law were there to help keep an eye on her. My brother-in-law made sure to keep his eye on AP from the window. My wife was still packing when the kids got home, and she made no attempt to speak to either of them, not even when our youngest cried for her. Before leaving, she took a few of our wedding photos off the wall and threw them on the floor to break them. I think she was expecting a reaction from me, given the way she looked at me while doing it, but since I didn't say anything, she just took the last of her bags and walked out the door. After she left, I had to call my elderly mother to come stay with me for a while, as I couldn't take care of my kids alone. I couldn't take much time off work, and I didn't have many daycare options either. I also ordered DNA tests for my kids. I was sure they were mine, but several people advised me to be certain. Thankfully, both of my children are mine, and yes, I also got tested for diseases, and I'm clean, thank God. About a week later, my wife showed up at my door, saying she would agree to a clean divorce if I did as well, which would mean she'd get half of everything. I said no to her face. There was some fighting back and forth, and she more or less admitted that she had found out the law in this state was not on her side. We had met, gotten engaged, married, and lived our entire lives in this state. There was no way she could avoid taking a major loss unless I agreed to settle, which I did not. I told her she had betrayed me, our kids, her parents, and practically everyone by having an affair, then slammed the door in her face. She left quietly, and I didn't see her again until court a few months later. In divorce court, my wife was visibly quite pregnant by then, and she had gotten a lawyer. I expected her to lie to the judge, and she started to a few times, but I had enough video evidence to refute any lies, so she didn't stand a chance. Instead, she tried to drag out the divorce by refusing to cooperate and making various demands. She wanted most of my savings, a long list of things I owned, and she wanted me to buy out her half of the house, even though she never paid into it. On my end, I was pushing for full custody of the kids and to get her name off the house deed. I had the video evidence to back up how she said she didn't really care for our children anymore, and how she would make up lies. My wife kept stalling and changing her demands, but the judge didn't let her drag things out, especially since this was an at-fault state. Being the cheater, she was entitled to very little, and her attempt to frame me made her case even worse. In the end, she lost all custody of our kids and walked away with nothing more than her personal belongings and what could be considered a fair financial settlement, given the circumstances. She also got the car I had bought for her a couple of years ago. The title was in my name, but I signed it over to her as part of the settlement. She had made no attempt to speak to our kids during the entire divorce, so I was awarded full custody. The house is entirely mine now, and I'm completely free of her. My ex-wife tried to keep up her lies about me to others during the divorce, but my sister spread the truth about her cheating, and soon all our mutual friends cut her off once they realized who was telling the truth. She and her AP left town together after the divorce ended. I heard AP wasn't fired, but he was transferred. They could have transferred him to freeze in Norway for all I care. I'm just happy they've both left. My ex should have had her baby by now, and I hope it was worth it to her. I realized I should have paid attention to the red flags long ago. I guess I just kept my rose-colored glasses on for our entire marriage. But it's all over now. Thank you to anyone who made it through this. I know it was a lot to listen to, but this is my life. Final edit. I got my ex-wife's name off the house deed because all bank records showed I was the only one who ever paid into it. My ex was repeatedly argumentative with the judge, and in an at-fault state, being a confirmed cheater puts you in a world of trouble during a divorce. It's like having a signed prenup against you. When I said I got the meanest lawyer at the firm, I meant it. The man was like a bear and a shark. My ex-wife's payout was $1,000, plus the car I bought for her that cost me $20,000. The car was paid off, and I transferred the title to her. My ex-wife was still offered partial custody of our children, but since the video of her saying she didn't care about them had been seen, she didn't bother. She willingly relinquished all rights to our kids when she realized she couldn't get her way. And for those who think the police wouldn't have arrested my ex for lying, think again. The police here don't mess around. My ex, with a sociopathic grin on her face, tried to frame me as someone who lays hands on his wife. That's more than enough grounds to get arrested. Thank you for watching.